The year was 1940, and Europe no longer moved to the rhythm of commerce or leisure. It moved to the rhythm of war. Factories that once produced household goods now echoed with the hammering of steel for military machines. Roads that might have carried families on holiday instead bore convoys of soldiers, trucks, and armored vehicles. In this world, the idea of a sports car felt almost absurd. Yet quietly, in workshops and design offices, the seeds of something that would one day become Porsche were already alive. At the center of it all was Ferdinand Porsche, a man driven less by luxury and more by engineering obsession. He was not thinking about elegance or prestige in 1940. He was thinking about function, efficiency, and survival in a system that demanded total alignment with the state. Years earlier, he had been tasked with designing a people's car. It was meant to be affordable, simple, and accessible to ordinary citizens. The concept was bold for its time, a reliable car that the average German worker could own. The design took shape as a small, rounded vehicle with an air-cooled engine, minimal complexity, and a shape that seemed almost organic, like something carved by wind rather than drawn on paper. By 1940, however, that dream had been overtaken by the reality of war. The factory that was supposed to mass-produce this people's car had shifted its priorities. Instead of families receiving their long-awaited vehicles, the assembly lines turned to military production. The same basic design principles, simplicity, durability, ease of maintenance, were now being applied to wartime machines. If you had walked through one of those factories in 1940, you would not have seen polished sports cars gleaming under showroom lights. You would have seen stripped-down vehicles, functional and rugged. One of them, derived from the earlier civilian concept, was a light military utility vehicle. It looked nothing like a modern performance car. Its body was flat and angular, its purpose unmistakable. It was built to carry soldiers across rough terrain, not to impress anyone with speed or beauty. Yet, even in that harsh environment, engineering elegance found its way in subtle forms. The air-cooled engine, for instance, was not just a technical choice. It meant the vehicle could operate in extreme conditions without the vulnerability of a radiator. It meant fewer parts to fail. It meant reliability when it mattered most. Ferdinand Porsche's work did not stop at light vehicles. He became involved in the design and development of heavier military machines, including tanks. These were massive, complex systems, far removed from the simplicity of the original people's car concept. Here, the challenges were different: armor thickness, firepower, mobility under extreme weight. Competing designs emerged, each pushing the limits of engineering under wartime pressure. Imagine standing beside one of these machines as it roared to life. The ground would tremble beneath your feet. The air would carry the sharp scent of fuel and hot metal. This was engineering at its most intense, shaped by urgency and conflict. But not all of Porsche's work was about scale and power. In quieter moments, in drafts and sketches, the idea of a small, efficient car still lingered. It was as if two futures existed side by side, one defined by war, the other by mobility and civilian life. In 1940, though, the war overshadowed everything. The roads told the story clearly. Instead of sleek vehicles racing for pleasure, there were columns of military transport. Instead of innovation driven by consumer desire, there was innovation driven by necessity. Every design decision had to answer a simple question: how does this serve the war effort? And yet, there was something quietly revolutionary about the earlier car design that refused to disappear. Its rounded shape, its compact size, its efficient engineering, all of it hinted at a different kind of future. A future where cars were not just tools of the state or the military, but personal machines that people could connect with. Inside the workshops, engineers and workers carried on their tasks with precision. Metal was cut, shaped, and assembled. Engines were tested. Prototypes were evaluated. There was little room for error, and even less room for imagination beyond what the moment demanded. Still, the act of building, of creating something that moved, something that worked, carried its own sense of purpose. If you could isolate one of those early car prototypes from the chaos of 1940 and place it on an empty road, you might begin to see what it represented. It was not fast by modern standards. It was not luxurious, but it was honest in its design. Every curve, every component served a purpose. It was a machine built with clarity of intent. That clarity would become important later. As the war continued, destruction spread across Europe. Cities were damaged, industries disrupted, lives altered in ways that could not be undone. By the time the conflict ended, the world that had existed before 1939 was gone. From that aftermath, something new began to emerge. The experience of building vehicles under pressure, of solving engineering problems with limited resources, of focusing on efficiency and reliability, all of it carried forward. When the war ended and the focus shifted back to civilian life, those lessons did not disappear. They evolved. A few years later, a new chapter began. The first true Porsche sports car would appear, not as a product of wartime necessity, but as a reflection of passion and innovation. It would carry forward the DNA of those earlier designs, the lightweight construction, the efficient engine, the emphasis on driving experience, but it would apply them in a completely different context. Looking back at 1940, it is easy to see only the war, the machinery, the harsh realities of the time. But hidden within that period was the foundation of something enduring. The idea that a car could be more than just transportation, that it could be engineered with precision, built with purpose, and eventually driven with joy. So, if someone asks what a Porsche was in 1940, the answer is not a single vehicle or a single design. It is a moment in transition. It was a time when engineering was shaped by conflict, when creativity was constrained by necessity, and when the future of an iconic brand existed only in fragments, prototypes, ideas, and the determination of the people behind them. Those fragments would survive the war. And from them, the Porsche the world recognizes today would eventually take shape.